I made a joke Friday. Someone after after they voted down witnesses, they said, "What do you think Trump's going to do next?" And I said, "Invade Poland, round up the Jews. Too dark, too dark." And you tweeted about it. You said in 1933, Germany entered a new era in which ideological fantasy of Carl Schmitt and other identity-obsessed Germans would replace reality. Now America can take a trip away from reality into a new age, or realize that he is the most dangerous president ever. You also said in a world where there's no truth, no right and wrong, this is what we get. Been there, done that. The article 20 Ways Trump is copying Hitler's early rhetoric and policies. I mean, if you don't know we're already soaking in fascism, then you're not paying attention, right?
Well, absolutely right. And what we have going on here is a denial of the truth. Clear facts don't matter anymore. We just make it up. And the more we make it up, if we've got a story to tell that people want to hear, then that's the truth. My truth is as good as your truth. And that was exactly the philosophy of Carl Schmitt, who was a far right-wing Catholic theologian before he became a member of the Nazi Party. The notion that there are no objective facts, that it's about German culture and the Germans see facts uniquely and so forth. This is a philosophy that these days is sometimes referred to as postmodernism, but it's really just a rehash of the same thing. And the article I tweeted out was, well, is Trump our first postmodern president? A president who really embraces the idea of denying objective truth, that objective truth is all seen in a cultural context here of making America great again, and of course his own biases about what makes America great, including his destruction of the Constitution, his denigration of certain ethnic groups, and so forth. And all of this is way, way too familiar, very similar to what happened to Germany in the 30s. Obviously, we're not there yet, but we need to stand up to this president and for the rule of law. And that's not what's happening right now.
That's exactly right. Richard, you and I had a great conversation at Politicon. I was telling you, my dad, as you know, lifelong Republican like you ran with Barry Goldwater, but Nuremberg prosecutor. And it's just, I loved your headline. Former Bush White House lawyer Richard Painter accuses McConnell of urinating on the Constitution. I remember, I'm still young enough to remember, or old enough to remember, when we took an oath to the Constitution of the United States, not to a person.
Well, yes, we have a Constitution, and we supposedly believe in our own Constitution, and we've amended it over the years to correct injustices that were clearly present at the founding of our country. But it is a Constitution that has a clear impeachment clause requiring a trial before the senators. The senators under oath. These senators took an oath to be impartial. They violated their oath. They committed perjury when they violated their oath and said they'd be impartial, and they were not. And then furthermore, this is not a trial. You cannot have a trial where there are no witnesses. They simply have lawyers pontificating on, and then they want to have closing arguments and an acquittal. And I have made it very clear that Chief Justice Roberts, if he wants any credibility, needs to declare a mistrial today because the Senate has refused to have a trial that anywhere comes close to what is required under the Constitution.
How about the lead defense counsel, Cipollone, being a fact witness in the case and failing to disclose that?
Well, it's absolutely absurd. I mean, the counsel for the defense, we have ridiculous arguments, and yes, they are fact witnesses. And Alan Dershowitz's arguments were patently absurd. In fact, he's arguing that the president can do anything he wants and not be impeached for it. Cannot be impeached for abuse of power. When indeed, if you look at the intent of the framers, it's very clear that they were afraid that we'd have a president who'd be another King George or like the Emperor Nero, or a tyrant who would abuse power, and that is exactly why we have the impeachment clause, so that Congress, the Senate, and the House can remove a president for abuse of power. And Dershowitz is getting up there going on and on about how we cannot do that. It just makes absolutely no sense. And then we don't get any witnesses. And this is, by the way, a very dangerous situation because this president was trying to extort assistance for his political campaign from a foreign country. And threatening to withhold hundreds of millions of dollars that the Ukrainians need to protect themselves from the Russian aggression. it's a very dangerous situation to have a president abusing his power in this way, and the Senate simply won't do anything about it.
Richard, speaking of the president's lawyer, I had to get your take on a Jonathan Turley tweet. He said, had they waited for a couple months, as I advised, they could have gotten Bolton's testimony and other witnesses as well as key court orders. It was a rush to a failed impeachment. History will view the decision to rush the vote as one of the most baffling decisions of all time. Can you explain why that is faulty logic?
It's absolute rubbish. I mean, Professor Turley, he's been trying to get in the press for years, and if he can try and prove that he knows more than anybody else, including Nancy Pelosi, who I happen to believe actually waited way too long to impeach Donald Trump. But anyway, Turley has been making arguments for the defense all along, and pushing the notion that somehow a president can't be impeached for these crimes. And that's the thrust of his tweets and his testimony before the United States House of Representatives. He was used by the Republicans, and his modus operandi is to go forward and say, I'm a liberal, and I didn't vote for the guy, but I'm all for him. And 20 years ago, Turley was saying we need to impeach Bill Clinton. Same old deal. It's a way to get into the newspapers and get on TV, but it all makes no sense.
Richard, a couple Super Bowl themed tweets. You said at a time when ideological extremists disparage the notion of objective truth, Trump's Super Bowl ad is the epitome of lies. What an insult to anyone working for the criminal justice reform. You also said an impeachment trial, though, and this is witnesses, is like a Super Bowl without a football. So Mitch McConnell should just take away the football and let them pretend to play the Super Bowl, or perhaps he could only do that at halftime if his team isn't winning. I mean, I think the fact that 82% of Americans want witnesses, they get it. You don't have to be a lawyer to go, oh, this is not a real trial. This is not fair.
Well, absolutely. And the reason I use the analogy to sports is not just because yesterday was Super Bowl Sunday, and of course Donald Trump forgot where Kansas City is in his place. But, this is an important analogy because in sports we expect fair play. And if we used in politics an approach that even remotely resembled what we do in sports, a great deal of this would not be happening. And what we have is a notion of fair play in politics that isn't fair. That's just result-oriented. And this is the same Mitch McConnell refused to even have a hearing for Judge Merrick Garland, who was nominated by President Obama for the United States Supreme Court. That was unprecedented. In other words, it's just what I can get away with. And if we had referees in the Super Bowl who behaved the way this Senate behaved, as supposed jurors in the impeachment trial, the Super Bowl would have been bought, the result bought years ago.
Yep.
But of course, we don't tolerate that. We haven't tolerated it since they fixed the World Series in 1919. We've been very vigilant about trying to make sure there's fair play, and that there are rules that both sides play by. And that's not happening here.
Yeah, Richard, sorry, we're running long as usual. We love having you so much. Primary day, you said, I think Elizabeth Warren is the best candidate in the race, but these Bloomberg ads get right to the point about Donald Trump. I agree in terms of fighting differently, but you also said you're going to vote for Warren. Her focus on corruption in Washington and on Wall Street is what our country needs right now. No more politics as usual. And I agree. I just think doesn't mean we have to stoop to their level, but we are up against the fight of our lives, aren't we?
Absolutely. I'm a political independent. I don't like the political powers that be in either of the major parties. So, of course, I might very well favor a candidate who made their name and doing something else other than politics. And Elizabeth Warren certainly fits that category. So does Mike Bloomberg, by the way. But I think Elizabeth Warren's a tad bit more middle class than Mike Bloomberg. She's absolutely brilliant. She appeals to me as an independent. But the other candidates are good, too. We'll see who wins.
Yep.
The bottom line is we need someone other than this tyrant in office. And the last thing I will say with Super Bowl Sunday is that I was thrilled to see that Vladimir Putin didn't get to pick the winner.
Yeah.
Mic drop. Richard Painter, host of Politics Podcast. Richard, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Richard.
He's awesome.
He's cuddly in person.
Mm-hmm. Is he?
Yes, I gave him a big hug.
I believe that.